Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here at the End to End Hockey channel. Today we're going to be doing another live video just like we did on Wednesday for the draft, this time for free agency. So there's definitely been a couple of things to discuss. As we talked about before, I'm about half an hour away from it starting to be free agency, so it's definitely interesting to see what happens in free agent frenzy at the first day of free agency. So going to be interesting to see. We'll go to everything coming up right now. So hello everyone, welcome back to another video here on my End to End Hockey channel. I know I haven't been talking a lot over the past few days. I did take a little bit of a day off yesterday. I was contemplating doing a video talking about some of the qualifying offers that happened, but I decided to talk about it on my live video here. I did do a blog post on the second day of draft day. If you want to go check that out, just go to the End to End Hockey blog. Definitely check that out. I discussed a lot of things that happened on the second day of the draft, including some of the draft rounds, so definitely go check that out. But definitely, I think this was a really good this is going to be a really good day today. It seems that there's going to be a lot of movement today. What looked like a really bleak draft class, free agent class I meant, looks like a little bit better right now, because it does seem like it's going to be a little bit more deep now that there's been a couple of guys who did not get their qualifying offers. So we'll get to all of that coming up right now. Just give me a second here. Once again, I've got my computer here. I've got I'm watching the live video on Sportsnet, so I can give you my live opinion. I've also got my water bottle this time, so I can stay rehydrated. And hopefully we can I can give you my opinion of all the stuff that happens over the next couple of hours, probably until around noonish. So hopefully we can continue to get some more things, and some significant things can happen today. Now, as you can see in the corners here, we have photos just like we did with the draft. On this side, we have my top 10 players on my free agent list. So on this side, you got my top 5, my top 1 through 5, and my 6 through 10 on the free agent list. Definitely, there's some interesting names here. I currently have Bertuzzi as number 1 on my list. On number 2, I have JT Compher. Number 3, I have Alex Killorn. Number 4, I have Dmitry Orlov. At number 5, I have Matt Dumba. At number 6, I have Connor Brown. At number 7, I have Tristan Jarry. At number 8, I have Vladimir Tarasenko. At number 9, I have Shane Gostisbehere. And at number 10, I have Frederik Andersen. So definitely, if you want to check out my full 50 player free agent list, there's a link to that down in the description. You can go check that out if you want. But here's my top 10 free agent list. We'll see where all these guys end up by the end of the day, hopefully. On this side, you got my top 10 possible trade options. So at 1, I have Alex DeBrincat in Ottawa. At number 2, I have Scheifele in Winnipeg. At number 3, I have Hellebuck in Winnipeg. At 4, Hanifin in Calgary. At 5, Lindholm in Calgary. And then down here, at 6, I have William Nylander from Toronto. At 7, I have John Gibson from Anaheim. At 7, I have Erik Karlsson from San Jose. At 8, I have John Gibson from Anaheim. At 9, I have Travis Konecny from Philadelphia. And at 10, I have Brett Pesce from Carolina. So we'll see how many of these guys are going to be moved by the end of this video. Not exactly sure how many, but once again, this side, my top 10 trade list, and on this side, my top 10 free agents as of right now. So definitely some interesting things. I'd love to hear what you think about these, about my top 10 possible trade list and my top 10 free agents down in the comments or in the chat. But definitely, we'll get to all the things here. So just to recap you on what's happened over the past couple of days, there was not really much that went on draft day 2. Not too much happened. We did have a couple of things that happened on draft day 2. There were 3 small trades. I'll just quickly touch on them. The New York Islanders moved forward Josh Bailey to the Chicago Blackhawks, as well as a 2026 second-round pick in exchange for future considerations. So it was really important for the Islanders to get Bailey's entire contract off his books. So good to see that Bailey left the Islanders. But interestingly enough, shortly after, the Chicago Blackhawks wound up buying out Bailey. So Bailey quickly went to Chicago, was bought out, and now Bailey's a free agent in this year's draft. So in this year's free agent class. So it's going to be interesting to see where Bailey ends up. But to buy out Bailey, the Hawks are able to get a second-round pick. So it's going to be interesting to see where Bailey goes. But I think this was a smart move. The Islanders get Bailey's full $5 million cap hit off, and the Blackhawks get a second-round pick for buying out Bailey. So that was a pretty good deal. A smaller deal was that the Chicago Blackhawks acquired the signing rights of Corey Perry in exchange for a 7th-round pick in next year's draft. So the Bolts were never going to sign Perry. He was going to be too expensive to sign with them. So they wound up moving him. They get a 7th-round pick in return. And if they could sign him, the Blackhawks were getting a huge, significant veteran-type guy who they can use in their middle six until a trade line and most likely trade him away at a reasonable cap hit. So that was a nice move. And Callum Costin from the Edmonton Oilers for future considerations. Now, Yamamoto was a solid middle six winger who had some inconsistent play over the past couple of years, but was really a key guy for them. So I'm surprised the Oilers didn't get anything back from him. Costin was a really good bottom six forward last year, so it definitely was really, really good for those two to be in Edmonton last year, but obviously the Oilers need cap space. Costin was an RFA, most likely going to need a bigger extension. Yamamoto was making $3.1 million, so they were both moved to Detroit. Now we'll get to what happened there in a couple of minutes, but so those were the three moves. Yamamoto and Costin to Detroit, Bailey to Chicago and was quickly bought out, and then Perry to Chicago as well. So not too much other movement there. There were a couple of signings I never got around to in my blog post that I'm going to discuss here. So first, the Vegas Golden Knights signed defenseman Braden Packle to a 2-year, two-way contract extension that have an average annual value of $275,000. Now, Packle was a decent depth defenseman. Whenever there was a couple of nights injured, Packle was always the guy who was able to come in. He was a solid third-pair defenseman. I think in time, once he gets a little bit more into the Knights system and is able to become a more consistent NHLer, he should be a solid third-pair defenseman. So a good signing there for the Golden Knights. The Ottawa Senators signed depth forward Jacob Larson. Larson signed a 1-year, two-way contract that will have an average annual value of $775,000, and they'll be going to start next year. Larson was a solid NHL defenseman at one point in his career. Last year, he played mostly in the AHL with Ottawa. He can still play as a third-pair defenseman, so to get some more added depth on the defensive end was really good for Ottawa on Thursday. And then on top of those two, newly acquired forward for the New Jersey Devils, Shane Bowers, who was a former first-round pick in 2017, also signed a 1-year, two-way contract that will have an average annual value of $775,000. Now, Bowers, in my opinion, can still be a good bottom six forward. Bowers was moved in the small deal with the Boston Bruins for Riley Walsh. I talked about in a separate video, I think, on Tuesday. So, yeah, there was definitely some interesting stuff there, but I think that was a pretty good move for the Devils and the Bruins. And I think Bowers in the Devils organization may get a little more of an opportunity in the bottom six, especially after what happened yesterday. So I think this is a really good move for the Devils to get Bowers. And then I also think getting some depth defensemen in Larson and Packle locked up for the next year at least is really good for the Golden Knights and the Senators. So definitely, there were some really good signings on Thursday. Yesterday, we had three major things happen. So there was a lot of signings yesterday, right before free agency started. There was also a couple of buyouts, and the qualifying offers needed to be given. So we'll start with the buyouts first. There were 4 buyouts as the first buyout period ended. First, Blake Wheeler with the Winnipeg Jets was bought out. Matt Duchene with the Nashville Predators was bought out. Mike Riley with the Boston Bruins was bought out, and Kailer Yamamoto, who was recently acquired, was bought out by the Detroit Red Wings. So for Wheeler, there was a lot of speculation that if they were not able to find a trade, this was going to be the solution. Wheeler really did want a fresh start. The Jets are trying to make it happen as best they can. The Jets are not going to be in any cap trouble for the next little while, so taking on a little bit of a bad contract cap penalty for Wheeler for the next couple of years, so Wheeler can go find another opportunity, I think was not bad for them. It does give them another roster spot on the forward group, so I definitely do wonder what happens with Wheeler today. Once again, he's become a UFA now, so he can sign for anywhere. There was a lot of speculation he would want to go to the Eastern Conference, so we'll have to wait and see, but Wheeler's now UFA. Matt Duchene was one I was a bit surprised about. Duchesne still had 3 years left on his contract at $8 million. The cap savings for this year is fantastic, but the cap penalty for the next 2 years following is going to be pretty hard on the Nashville Predators, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do with this cap space they have this year. Duchesne's a solid forward, in my opinion. He can definitely be a good middle six forward, but he was nowhere close to producing at the $8 million contract level. So in my opinion, it was the right move for the Predators to buy out Duchesne. He's now a UFA, so it's going to be interesting to see where he lines up this today, or wherever he ends up winding up in free agency. Duchesne's a solid NHL player. Like I say, he's a point-producing middle six forward. So in my opinion, Duchesne's a solid guy who I think could find a home in any sort of place. So going to be interesting to see where he ends up. Yamamoto was a surprise one. After acquiring him for nothing, the Detroit Red Wings wind up just moving on from him. So it's quite weird to middle six winger. I know his contract wasn't the greatest at $3.1 million, but he's still a pretty good player. So I am quite surprised the Red Wings wound up buying him out. I think in time, Yamamoto should still be a good middle six forward, at least a third line forward. So I think there will be a lot of interest in him today. Once again, he's also going to be UFA. So and the cap that the Red Wings use, the cap penalty they have, is not overly significant, as Yamamoto was a younger player. So, once again, it's a decent move for the Red Wings. They do have a ton of forwards, but I am quite surprised that after acquiring him, they quickly bought him out. As for the other last buyout, Mike Riley of the Boston Bruins was bought out of his final year of his contract. I think this one was not much of a surprise. Riley was making $3 million. He's a decent third-pair defenseman, but nowhere near that contract level. And the Bruins need some cap space, so it saves them a lot of cap space for next year. I think it's like somewhere like $2.5 million more for next year, so it's a pretty decent move for the Bruins, even though if it's a little bit more of a cap penalty the year after. And I do think this is a really good move for Boston. So once again, Mike Riley in Boston has the final year of his contract bought out. Kyle Yamamoto, the final year of his contract bought out. Blake Wheeler, the final year of his contract bought out. And Matt Duchene, the final 3 years of his contract bought out. And all four are going to be UFAs this year. So going to be interesting to see where all four of those guys end up. Some signings that happened last night with free agency looming. We've got a couple here. Good third pair defenseman, but in my opinion, he's more of a minor forward. So some depth on the defense is really good, especially with the Canucks having a really battered blue line right now and not having too many good defensemen. But definitely, I think this was a really good signing for the Canucks to re-sign Juleson. The Edmonton Oilers brought back winger Matthias Janmark, the left wing, right wing forward, signed a 1-year deal. One way that's $1 million with his AAV. So Janmark was a good bottom six forward last year. Started in the AHL due to the Oilers' tight cap situation, but once there were some injuries, he got called back up. He was in the bottom six. He was a solid bottom six forward. So that was a really good signing for Edmonton. They're, once again, a very cap-strapped team right now, so adding a guy like Janmark is a really good addition for the Oilers, and I think that's just a really good option for Edmonton. You also got a couple of San Jose Sharks signing their contract extensions with the Sharks, as both goaltender prospect Eetu Makiniemi and forward Jacob Peterson both signed 1-year 2-way contracts that have an average annual value of $775,000, and the deal will begin at the start of next year. Now, for both of these guys, Makiniemi, Peterson, both decent prospects. Peterson has been up and down in the NHL, AHL over the past little while. I think he can still be a good bottom six forward, but would not surprise me at all if he was a AHL forward again next year. Like I say, he's a decent bottom six forward, but he's also been playing a lot at the AHL level. So once again, he's a very versatile forward. He can either be in the NHL or AHL. So that's a really good sign for the Sharks to get some depth there. Makiniemi is a pretty good goalie prospect, maybe not a really great one, but on a 1-year 2-way deal, he should probably play in the AHL again next year. I would expect Makiniemi to probably be the AHL starter. I think eventually he could be a good backup, but for the time being, he's still an AHL player. So some good depth signings there for the Sharks. The Arizona Coyotes signed depth defenseman Cameron Crotty, who's a right-shot defenseman. He gets a 1-year 2-way deal that have an average annual value of $775,000, and will start once again start at the beginning of this now new season. So Crotty, decent depth defenseman. He's a really good bottom six. He's a really good AHL player, probably could be a third pair defenseman at the NHL level, but most likely is going to play at the AHL again next year. So once again, a really good depth signing for the Coyotes. The Columbus Blue Jackets signed forward Marcus Bjork to a 1-year, 2-way deal that has an average annual value of $775,000. Defenseman Bjork, once again, really good player. When the Jackets got a lot of injuries this year, he was able to step into the third pair role. He was able to do really good there. And I think Bjork's a really good forward defenseman. I think Bjork can definitely be a solid player for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Most likely still an AHL defender, but still, he's a good player who I think has a lot of potential to possibly be a third pair defenseman at the NHL level. So a good signing there for the Jackets. Another one would be Jared Roseberg, who's another defenseman who once again signs a 1-year, 2-way deal at $775,000 AAV. Roseberg with the Dallas Stars. Once again, decent AHL forward. Could be a good NHL forward if there's injuries and if he's called upon. But for the most part, he's a really good depth defenseman. So once again, a really good depth signing here for the Stars. The LA Kings signed forward Taylor Ward to a 1-year, 2-way contract that have an average annual value of $775,000, and the deal will begin at the start of next year. Now for Ward, decent bottom six forward. I think in time, Ward's more of an AHL forward now. The Kings still have a stacked team, so I don't expect him to get too much of NHL action this year, but once again, he's a decent prospect, and I think maybe in time he could be a good bottom six forward, but for now he's going to be an AHL forward. So some more added depth for the Kings. And then just a couple more signings here of the smaller side. The St. Louis Blues signed defenseman Tyler Tucker, who was actually pretty good, got into a couple games this year, has some potential to be a good third pair defenseman, to a 2-year, 1-way contract that will have an average annual value of $800,000. So definitely, it sounds like Tucker could definitely have some pretty good potential, and I think in time he could definitely be a good third pair defenseman, but it would not surprise me at all if he got at least a look at the NHL level next year, and I think he could eventually be a really good defenseman for the St. Louis Blues. The Wild signed 3 players to league minimum deals, all 1-year, 2-way, $775,000 deals. They signed forward Nick Swanee, who's once again AHL player, could be an NHL forward if they run into injuries. Mermis, who's I think a little bit more likely to be one of the first call-ups if the Wild have some injuries on the defensive end, and McIntyre, who was the third-string goaltender last year in the Minnesota Wild organization. So definitely some pretty good depth adds here. I would expect McIntyre to once again probably play with Wallstead in the AHL next year. Mermis I would expect to start at the AHL level and be one of the first call-ups if there's injuries. And Swanee I would expect to be more of an AHL forward next year. But still, some good depth signings there for the Wild. There was a couple more bigger signings that we want to discuss. So first with the Golden Knights, the Adin Hill contract finally became official, and the Golden Knights have now officially signed Adin Hill to a 2-year contract extension with an AAV of $4.9 million. Now for Hill, that's a solid signing for them. I don't think anyone at the start of the season thought Hill would get close to $5 million, but after the playoffs he had, it was definitely a solid showing for him, and I think Hill definitely proved that he could definitely earn that much money. I think the Golden Knights did really good here because even though it's a pretty high contract for a goalie, it's only a 2-year contract, so if he doesn't do overly well this year, it's not like they're going to have to keep him for the next 4 or 5 years. They can easily ride out the next couple of seasons. So I think Hill can definitely still be a good goaltender. Not sure if he can continue his playoff performance, but Hill's still a pretty good goaltender, and I think this contract works well for both sides. It's a short-term deal, which helps the Golden Knights, and it's a really good cap hit, which helps Hill. So it's a pretty good deal for both sides. Then we also had another goaltender signed with another of the recent expansion teams, and that is the Seattle Kraken, as the Kraken signed goaltender Joey Daccord to a 2-year contract extension that have an AAV of $1.2 million. So Daccord had a fantastic season in Coachella Valley, which was the Kraken's AHL affiliate this past year. He definitely had one heck of a series. One heck of a playoff run, a really good third-string goaltender. There's a lot of people out there who think that Daccord should be the Kraken backup. in the not too distant future. I think at this contract level, Daccord should definitely be the backup for the team next year. So in my opinion, Daccord's a really good goalie. This is a really good contract, 2 years, just over 1.2 mil after the season he had at the AHL level. That's a really good deal, and it would not surprise me at all if the Kraken ran with a Grubauer-Daccord tandem next year in net. So I think that's a really good deal, and I think Daccord should definitely thrive at the NHL level eventually once he gets there. Another big signing that happened, the last of the big signings that happened last night, Corey Perry did end up extending exact same contract that Nick Foligno did. I talked about that in a recent video. 1 year contract extension, $4 million. So once again, just like Foligno, Perry can be a good middle six forward in Chicago. He's a good veteran player. He can provide experience to a very young Chicago team, which could be very useful for the Chicago Blackhawks. And at the deadline, if they're not doing too well, which is expected, they can move Perry and Foligno at a reduced cap hit for some draft capital. I think that's a really good move for the Hawks. We saw them do this last year when they signed Domi and Athanasiou to 1 year, $3 million deals with the intention to move them at the deadline. They were never able to move Athanasiou and have now extended him again, but they were able to move Domi for a second-round pick. So I think this is the sort of deal that the Hawks want. They play higher in the lineup, they get a little bit more points, they become a little more attractive at the deadline, and then they're able to move them at a reduced cap hit for some draft capital. So I think that's a really good move for the Chicago Blackhawks to get Perry and Foligno, and I think signing them to 1 year, $4 million deals is really good, as I don't think anyone on the open market would have given Perry or Foligno that sort of money. So that's a pretty good deal for the Chicago Blackhawks to sign. Now, just give me a second here. So that was all the signings for yesterday. There was definitely some qualifying offers that were pretty significant. That some players didn't get qualifying offers. There were definitely some pretty significant players who did not get qualifying offers. So first, there was the we'll start with the Pacific Division. A couple of key guys in Anaheim and Max Comtois, who I don't think is too surprising, didn't get a qualifying offer, and defenseman Simon Benoit both didn't get qualifying offers. In Calgary, no one significant didn't get a qualifying offer. Same thing with Edmonton. The LA Kings, there was a couple. Former 2017 first-round pick Elias Anderson, who's more of a bomb six forward right now, didn't get a qualifying offer. Jared Anderson-Dolan didn't. A good prospect in Aiden Dudas didn't get any contract extensions. So definitely, it's really interesting to see that those guys didn't get contract extensions in LA, or at least qualifying offers, I meant. For the San Jose Sharks, a guy like Noah Gregor and Evgeny Svechnikov didn't get contract extensions. In Seattle, a very, very good bottom six forward in Daniel Sprong didn't get one. Obviously, his arbitration piece would be super high, so I can see why the Kraken didn't sign him, but it was a really key piece of that bottom six, so I'm surprised they moved on from him. Same thing with Morgan Geekie, who was a really good bottom six forward. I think he was a solid option there for the Kraken, so really, really surprised that the Kraken let those two guys go. For Vancouver, a couple of decent defensemen, Ethan Bear and Travis Dermott. Bear was going to be injured to start the season, so I can see why they didn't want to pay him his qualifying offer. Dermott, I think, has been a good third pair defenseman, so I'm quite surprised that those two didn't get their qualifying offer. And former second overall pick in 2017, Nolan Patrick, who's been injured really much over the past little while, was not qualified by a Golden Knights, which I don't think is too surprising, but just given the fact he was a really high pick, I'm quite surprised that I know there's injuries, but I'm quite surprised he didn't get a qualifying offer as well. So definitely interesting to see. The Central Division guys, a key forward in Arizona and Christian Fisher didn't get his contract qualifying offer. Quite surprising. It's not like the Arizona Coyotes still want to sign him, but they just didn't want to sign him to his qualifying offer. The Hawks didn't sign young defenseman Caleb Jones, who was Hawks defenseman Seth Jones' brother. So quite surprised that they didn't extend a qualifying offer to him, and the Hawks have tons of cap space, so I am quite wondering why they didn't do that. On top of those guys, Dallas didn't really not qualify anyone significant. Minnesota, definitely. Guys like Sean Steele, who were decent bottom six forwards last year, both didn't get qualifying offers. From Nashville, a guy like Cal Foote and a forward like Rasmus Asplund, both didn't get qualifying offers. I thought Foote would have probably gotten one. Asplund was up for the bait, but Cal Foote I did think was going to get one, so I'm quite surprised that both of them didn't. On top of those two, you've got with the St. Louis Blues, no one really who didn't get a qualifying offer. Same thing with Winnipeg Jets except for Kevin Stenlund. So definitely there's some decent, interesting players there. For the Boston Bruins, no one really interesting there. The Buffalo Sabres didn't qualify fourth line center Tyson Jost, who I think could be a good name to watch out for today. The Detroit Red Wings, surprisingly, didn't sign Klim Kostin. We'll get to that in a couple minutes as there has been some more updates on that earlier today. But it was quite surprising that they buy out Kailer Yamamoto and they don't qualify Klim Kostin, yet they got both of them from the Edmonton Oilers. So quite surprised that they did that. They also didn't qualify solid third pair defenseman in Gustav Lindstrom. So quite surprised that those two guys were gone. With the Florida Panthers, they did move on from a couple of guys like a Giovanni Smith and a Colin White, who were decent bottom six forwards last year, so I am quite surprised that those two guys are gone. Montreal didn't qualify Guryanov. Guryanov does have a high, close to $3 million qualifying offer, so I can see why they didn't qualify him, but he's still a solid middle six forward in my opinion, so quite surprised that didn't happen. With the Ottawa Senators, not really too much significant, but they didn't qualify a guy like Julien Gauthier or Dylan Gambrell, so once again, not too much of a surprise. They're decent bottom six forwards, but both of those guys are gone now. With the Toronto Maple Leafs, no one huge who did not get his qualifying offer. The Tampa Bay Lightning, same sort of thing. No one huge who did not get their qualifying offer. With the Carolina Hurricanes, Jesse Puljujarvi, I don't think it's too much of a surprise, but he's a big name. I think he could be signing maybe like a league minimum deal in the bottom six of a team, so it's going to be interesting to see where Puljujarvi goes. You've also got a couple of other players. The Jackets, no one really did not get the qualifying offer there. The Devils, they didn't bring back Bastian. They didn't bring back Boquist. They didn't bring back McLeod. Those are three key bottom six forwards of their team last year. So I do wonder if they're going to try and rework their bottom six this year. With the New York Islanders, once again, not really too many significant pieces there. New York Rangers, disgruntled prospect Libor Hayek was not brought back. Decent third pair defenseman, so I am a little bit surprised they didn't bring him back, but once again, with his track record in New York, I can see why they wouldn't bring him back. Over in Philadelphia, former first-round pick Kiefer Bellows, once again, not too surprising, just a highly drafted player who hasn't really worked out at the NHL level, so not too surprised he didn't come back. The Pittsburgh Penguins, once again, not really too many significant names. Same thing with Washington Capitals. So some pretty decent names here who did not get qualifying offers, and I think will make this free agent class and free agent frenzy day all the more exciting. So it's going to be interesting to see who goes where today. Like I said, there's a ton of guys there. There was a couple of decent buyouts over the past week. We once again still have some solid options here on the free agent market, and then there's also the trade market as well, which could heat up today. So definitely some interesting things to see. Now, there has been a couple of signings earlier today as free agent frenzy kicks off. Not too many. We're going to talk about a couple of first. So the first five were all signed by Detroit or Ottawa. So the first five contracts signed on July 1st were all Detroit or Ottawa. So once again, coming back to that Detroit thing, they did bring back Klim Kostin. So after not qualifying him, probably worried about his arbitration possible numbers, they were able to work out a contract. So Kostin will go back to Detroit on a 2-year, $2 million contract. So a decent signing for a good bottom six forward, in my opinion. Kostin should definitely work well as a checking forward with the Red Wings. So that's a pretty good signing for Detroit. You've also got Gustav Lindstrom, who they brought back. Like I said, he was another guy who didn't qualify. They signed on a 1-year, $950,000 deal. So decent third pair defenseman, maybe seventh defenseman, depending on what Detroit does with their defense this offseason. And he's a pretty good young forward, so young defenseman. So definitely, I really do think that Lindstrom could be a good pickup here. And on top of those guys, Matt Luff with the Detroit Red Wings is also re-upped. Luff signed last offseason as a bottom six forward, and he's going to be brought in on a 1-year, 2-way deal that have an average annual value of $775,000. So once again, Luff's a good bottom six forward and can help the Red Wings either as a minor forward at the NHL level or a top-end AHL forward. So some pretty good signings there for Detroit. The Ottawa Senators re-signed two defensemen. First, with one of their key young players, in Jacob Bednar-Docker, they signed him to a 2-year, $805,000 deal. Bernard Docker definitely showed his NHL potential last year, got a couple of looks at the NHL level. I would be shocked if he did not have at least a third pair role this upcoming season. So that's a really good signing. Under $1 million for the next 2 years for a good prospect in Bernard Docker, I think is a really good deal for the Sens. And they also signed former 2017 first-round pick Erik Brannstrom. Brannstrom gets a 1-year, $2 million contract. Brannstrom had a really good season this past year, and he was a really good really good third pair defenseman who's really rounded out his game a little bit. So good signings there for the Ottawa Senators. And then, it can't be free agent frenzy is just getting underway now as 9 o'clock, so there's going to be some deals trickling in. There's a couple of rumored deals, Reeves in Toronto, Lucic back in Boston. There's a couple of other ones, but one that we do know for sure is Oliver Ekman-Larsson, bought out by the Vancouver Canucks about a week and a half ago. He has signed a 1-year, $2.25 million contract with the Florida Panthers. So once again, we know the Panthers are going to have some bad injury problems on their defensive end with guys like Ekblad and Montour both injured to start the season. So they need some good defensive options to help them. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is not going to come overly expensive. It's a 1-year contract, and you can help them in the short term be a good offensive top 4 defenseman. And when the guys like Ekblad and Montour come back, he can be a solid third pair defenseman. So it's a really good pickup for Florida, in my opinion. They need defense, and they're able to get here with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. A couple of other signings. The Carolina Hurricanes have extended 2 of their current players. They extend right winger Jesper Fast on a 2-year, $2.4 million deal. That's a solid signing. Fast is a really good third line winger for the Canes, and I think he should continue to be really good in Carolina. Antti Raanta has also signed a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. So as I was talking about a little while ago, Canes need to find someone who they could pair with Kochetkov. There was some talk that could bring back one of their key guys. So it seems that they are going to bring back Raanta to continue to work with him. So going to be interesting to see. And then not a free agent signing, but a decent signing nonetheless, and one that I think is pretty significant. Jackets first round pick from this past year, and this past draft on Wednesday, third overall. Adam Fantilli has signed his entry-level contract, a 3-year, $950,000 AAV. Fantilli was a guy who was supposed to go to college. You don't have guys sign the ALCs who are going to college, so it seems like Fantilli will be playing pro this year. So whether it's at the AHL or they're able to find a way to NHL, I think they'll definitely find a way to put Fantilli in the NHL, especially with the Jackets' weak center group. But that's definitely a solid signing there for the Jackets. So definitely not too much signing so far. Kostin, Lindstrom, Luff back in Detroit. Bernard Docker and Brannstrom back in Ottawa. Fast and Raanta back in Carolina. Fantilli's been signed to his entry-level contract by the Jackets. And Oliel is now in Florida. So definitely some interesting signings so far, but there's going to be a ton more over the next little while. So definitely, like I said, we got some rumors here. It sounds like Reeves is going to sign a 3-year contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs. There's definitely some other possibilities here. Just looking at some stuff here. So it sounds like there also could be a deal here between Luke Schenn, former Canuck Maple Leaf, and the Nashville Predators. That's just something that sounds like could happen. The Sharks still sound like they're trying to move Erik Karlsson. The Canadiens still sound like they're trying to move Joel Edmondson. So it sounds like those two are going to be trying to done. Really does sound like Schenn's going to be going to the Nashville Predators. It's a really solid addition if that is correct. Sounds like a 3-year deal. Sounds like Joel Edmondson might be going to the Washington Capitals. This is something that's happening right now. William Nylander, who's been one of the many players who have been speculated in possible trade talks. As I have him here down as number 6 on my trade bait list. Definitely, it sounds like his 10-team no trade list kicks in today. So definitely interesting to see where he winds up going. Nylander's a solid top 6 forward. There's definitely sounds like there's contract extensions ongoing. Doesn't sound like the Maple Leafs want to pay Nylander over $9 million, and it sounds like Nylander wants to be in the $9 to $10 million range. So I definitely do think Nylander will try and sign with the Leafs. I think Nylander wants to be there. I think the Leafs do want him. But if they can't get to a contract extension, I do think they have to, at the very least, consider moving Nylander. I know he's one of their Leafs' better players, but they have to try and consider moving him. So going to be interesting to see what Nylander does. Is he able to sign an extension over the next little while, or do they have to try and move him? Definitely interesting to see. Once again, sounds like Luke Schenn might be signing with the Nashville Predators. Lucic back with the Boston Bruins. It sounds like the Maple Leafs will be signing Ryan Reeves. It sounds like Joel Edmondson is about to be dealt to the Washington Capitals. It sounds like the San Jose Sharks are still trying to move Erik Karlsson. So a lot of things happening right now that could be lots of things happening that could definitely be really good for these teams. Going to be interesting to see what some more signings are here as signings and trades continue to happen. There's also been now a couple more signings as I'm looking at here. The Washington Capitals have brought back depth goalie Hunter Shepard to a 2-year, 2-way contract that has the average annual value of $775,000. Shepard's, once again, AHL goalie. The Caps have their goaltending tandem set right now with Kemper and Lindgren, so they don't need an NHL goalie. So, once again, they lost a guy like Zachary Fucale in free agency this year, so they needed to replace a depth goalie who could help them if they ran into injuries. So I think Shepard could be that, and I think that's a really good contract for both Shepard and the Capitals. But a decent one here, another move by Kyle Dubas. I know we talked about the Riley Smith deal a couple times on draft day. It says here that the Pittsburgh Penguins have just signed forward Matt Nieto to a 2-year, 1-way contract that have an average annual value of $900,000. So that's a really good deal. Nieto's a solid bomb 6 forward. In my opinion, he can definitely be a good, maybe 4th line forward with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he just adds a little bit more depth to that Penguins organization. At $900,000, that's a fantastic deal for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So pretty good signing there. Going to be interesting to see what some of these moves are. And yes, it's now official. So Luke Schenn is now headed to the Nashville Predators on a 3-year deal that will have an average annual value of $2.75 million. So as I said, that's a really good deal. We know the Preds lost Ekholm. We know that there could be, and I stress could be, trade possibilities for guys like Tyson Barrie or Dante Fabro. So there's, once again, like I said, there's possible trade options for 2 key right-shot defensemen, and they're going to need a guy to replace them if they were to move a guy like Fabro or Barrie. So I definitely think Schenn could definitely be a good veteran leader for that team. He can definitely be a good top 4 defenseman in the short term. Maybe eventually, as that contract goes on, he can go more into a third pair role. And I think in time, Schenn should definitely be an awesome player there for Nashville. So some pretty good depth there for the Predators as they get a good top 4 defenseman in Schenn for the next couple of years. So some pretty good signings there as of right now. Still no trades to discuss right now, so definitely some interesting stuff that's happened. So if you're just joining us, there's been a couple of signings earlier today. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is now heading to the Florida Panthers. Matt Nieto is going to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Luke Schenn is heading to the Nashville Predators. Adam Fantilli has signed his entry-level contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets, and there have been a couple of other re-signs with the Detroit Red Wings, Ottawa Senators, and Carolina Hurricanes. So definitely some interesting deals happened so far. Definitely, once again, top 10 trade bait players and top 10 free agents in my opinion on my trade bait list and on my top 50 free agents. So definitely, if you want to check those out, definitely go to the End-to-End Hockey blog. I have the full 50-team trade list. I also have the full 50-player free agent list. So definitely check those 2 things out. And I think there's definitely a big chance we could see a lot of movement here today. So definitely, we've had some start things off really well with guys like Schenn and Nieto and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Kostin going back to Detroit. We also had another pretty decent signing here, and in the really recent time. Just now, Jared Anderson-Dolan, who was not given a qualifying offer by the LA Kings, has been re-signed on a 1-year, 1-way deal that have an average annual value of $775,000. Dolan was a really good bomb 6 / spare forward for the LA Kings this year, and he definitely showed that he can be a really good bomb 6 forward. So a really good signing for the LA Kings, and once again he adds another good depth piece to that LA Kings bomb 6. So some pretty good signings so far here up to this point for the NHL free agency. Probably going to be a ton more, but as we know so far, Nashville has. But as we know so far, Nashville has signed Schenn. Nieto has signed in Pittsburgh, as well as Oliver Ekman-Larsson in Florida. So some pretty good signings so far. Definitely going to be waiting and seeing what other things are sort of happening right now. There definitely seems to be some more updates that are happening. Like we said, Ryan Reaves, it does sound like is going to sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Also, sounds like from Frank Seravalli, he's saying that forward Lane Peterson is going to be joining the Edmonton Oilers, so going to have to wait for confirmation on that. It sounds like Michael McLeod, who was not given a qualifying offer by the New Jersey Devils, will be extended by the Devils and will be signing a new deal, so it sounds like that will happen. It's also sounding like Edmonton might be the team who lands Connor Brown, who's one of my top 10 free agents there. Definitely, Pierre LeBrun said that it sounds like Alex Killorn is going to be going to free agency, so that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. It sounds like Joel Edmondson will be dealt to the Washington Capitals for a couple of draft picks. Also sounds like another guy who wasn't qualified, Nathan Bastian, will be extended by the New Jersey Devils. So going to be interesting to see what else the Devils do today. It sounds like they've got a couple of depth pieces that they're going to try and sign. Definitely seems like they're going to have a lot of pieces too. So some pretty good things here. Also, Mikhail Maltsev, who was in the Colorado Avalanche's organization these past couple of years, wasn't tendered a qualifying offer, has signed a 1-year, 2-way contract that have an average annual value of $275,000 with the LA Kings. So once again, Maltsev, decent bomb six forward if need be, but more of a minor forward at this point in time. Solid player who I think could be a good player here. So some pretty solid depth addition for the LA Kings. Definitely, with their team the way it is right now, they could definitely use some cheaper contracts. So a really good deal for the LA Kings to get Maltsev. Definitely, it sounds like there's a lot of things that are happening right now. Just looking at some more possibilities of things here. Sounds like Ryan O'Reilly could be going to the Nashville Predators. We know that Nashville's been looking for some centers. It sounds like Elliot Friedman and David Pagnotta are both reporting this right now. It sounds like it will be Ryan O'Reilly going to Nashville. So no contract details yet, but that's a pretty good deal for Nashville, given the fact they needed some center depth. We've also been hearing something about Jonathan Quick going to the New York Rangers, so it sounds like that could be a possibility. Sounds like Kevin Stenlund, who wasn't dealt a qualifying offer by the Winnipeg Jets, will be signing a cheap deal with the Florida Panthers. That sounds like it's another thing that could happen. Sounds like Edmondson will be going to the Washington Capitals. Sounds like it's all but a done deal right now. Jonathan Quick, who was a good player, good long-time LA King, helped the Golden Knights to get to the Stanley Cup this past year. It sounds like he could be going to the New York Rangers as Shesterkin's backup. So once again, still waiting on to see what happens there. But some decent possible signings here. Definitely sounds like there's going to be some more. And yes, so we do know 2 more signings now. Ryan Reaves has extended with the Toronto Maple Leafs. The right winger has signed a 3-year deal, one-way, that will have an average annual value of $1.35 million, and the deal will begin at the start of next year. And they'll begin this year. So for Reaves, that's a really good addition for the Leafs. They want to improve their bomb six, get a little bit tougher to play against, and I think with Reaves, they should be able to get that. Once again, not sure the 3-year deal is overly great, but I think Reaves at a $1.3 million cap, it is decent enough. So that's a really good signing for both Reaves and the Leafs. Leafs get a little bit more bite to their bomb six, and Reaves gets a really good contract for the next 3 years. So Reaves is coming to Canada to play with the Maple Leafs, and it is now official. Lane Peterson will be signing a 2-year, $775,000 deal with the Edmonton Oilers. Peterson was a guy who's been bouncing around from the NHL to the AHL over the past little while, and definitely he's been a really good player with all the NHL teams he's been able to play for. I think he played with Vancouver for a little bit. He's also been with the Carolina Hurricanes, the San Jose Sharks, the Columbus Blue Jackets, so signs a couple of year deal with the Edmonton Oilers, and I think he could be a really good bomb six forward there if he's able to get an opportunity at the NHL level. So once again, could be just a depth signing who plays in the minors for most of the season, but I think he could be a good bomb six forward for the Edmonton Oilers. So that's a really good signing there. Does sound like Ryan O'Reilly will be signing with the Nashville Predators, going from one Central Division team to another. He was with the St. Louis Blues over the past couple of years before being traded to the Maple Leafs last trade deadline. So going to be interesting to see. It sounds like James Van Riemsdyk will be adding it sounds like the Boston Bruins will be adding James Van Riemsdyk on a cheap one-year deal. And it sounds like the Carolina Hurricanes are trying to re-sign Frederik Andersen. So going to be interesting to see where those two guys end up. Going to be interesting to see if the Canes do end up signing Andersen. But JVR in Boston, I think, could be a really good addition, especially given the fact that the team has lost Tull. Definitely going to be interesting to see what other options here are here for these teams. So far, we have not had very much movement in our top 10, in my top 10 trade bait list or my top 10 free agent board. So don't know exactly who could still be signed first. But when we find out someone who's been traded or been dealt or signed, who's in my top 10, I'll definitely let you know. But for now, it sounds like there's still a lot of things coming in. It sounds like Boston could be signing JVR. Sounds like there could be a couple of other moves in the works. So definitely interesting to see. It is now official. So on top of adding Luke Schenn on a 3-year, $2.75 million deal, the Nashville Predators have now signed Ryan O'Reilly on a 4-year contract extension of average annual value of $4.5 million. Now we know that they recently traded Ryan Johansson. They moved on from Mikael Granlund at the deadline. They bought out Matt Duchene just yesterday, so they moved on from all their big-time centers. They knew they needed some more depth. They had a lot of cap space to work with, and this is a solid sign for the Nashville Predators. In my opinion, whether it's the first or the second line, O'Reilly can be a solid top 6 center with the Nashville Predators. And I think he could definitely be a good two-way forward, and he could definitely be helping a lot of those Tino or Novak really grow in their team. So that's a really good signing, in my opinion, for Nashville, and I think O'Reilly is going to be a really good top 6 center for the Nashville Predators for the foreseeable future. So really good there for the Nashville Predators. Definitely had a really busy first hour of free agency. And the Joel Edmondson deal is now official done. So Edmondson, at half of his cap hit, so a $1.75 million cap hit, has been traded to the Montreal Canadiens. Edmondson, at $1.75 million cap hit, has been dealt from the Canadiens to the Capitals in exchange for the Capitals 2024 third-round pick, which the Washington Capitals owned, and the Washington Capitals own 2024 7th-rounder. So, once again, the Capitals deal 7th and a 3rd-rounder in this upcoming draft for next year. In exchange, they get Joel Edmondson at a half of his cap hit. So, once again, Edmondson's definitely dealt with a lot of injuries. There was a lot of talk he could be moved at this past deadline if he was healthy, and he was not healthy enough. So, the Canadiens kept him. They definitely don't want to risk losing him to injuries again and possibly not being able to trade him before he's a free agent next offseason. So I think that was the right move, just given the fact that he has a long history of being banged up. So that was a really good move, in my opinion, for the Montreal Canadiens. They get a 3rd and 7th round pick in return for a good, decent veteran forward. So it's a pretty good deal. And for the Capitals, they get a solid guy who can work in their top 4 or their top 6, maybe play with one of their younger players, and could definitely thrive in that organization. So I definitely like this addition for the Capitals. Also like this addition for the Canadiens, as Canadiens get a couple of good draft picks for a solid veteran who is probably not going to be back after next year, and the Capitals are able to get a solid veteran to help them try and make it back to the playoffs. So some pretty good deals there for the Canadiens and the Capitals to work on. Once again, Edmondson was on my trade bait list. He was not top 10, but I'm pretty sure he was in the mid-20s. So definitely, he's going to be another guy who's been crossed off my trade bait list and who's now off the board. Going to be interesting to see some other signings that happen. We have had a couple more signings since then. As we talked about, Kevin Stenlund has signed a 1-year, $1 million deal with the Florida Panthers. That's a solid signing in my opinion. Stenlund's a decent bomb 6 forward. With the Panthers having not too much cap space, that's a really good depth addition, and I think on the 4th line, Stenlund should definitely improve that Panthers team. So that's a really good signing for the Panthers. The Boston Bruins, exact same deal as Stenlund with James Van Riemsdyk. Van Riemsdyk signs a 1-year, $1 million deal with the Boston Bruins. So once again, decent bottom 6 forward. Decent middle 6 forward. He can definitely still score at a really good pace if he stays healthy. He can probably still put up 20-25 goals. And playing in the Boston Bruins organization with a couple of key guys like maybe even David Pastrnak, he could be a solid addition for the Boston Bruins. So that's a really good addition. And Van Riemsdyk goes from Philly and Toronto, playing those two teams all of his life, to the Maple Leafs rivals in the Boston Bruins. And then the New Jersey Devils have extended center Michael McLeod to a one-year contract extension of average annual value of $1.4 million. So for McLeod, he's once again a very solid option there in their bottom six. He's had a fantastic year this past year, and he definitely worked really well with the organization. So I definitely do like the addition of McLeod with the New Jersey Devils. I do still think that he's a really good bottom six forward. I just think that they were really wary of his arb rates. So definitely do think that that's a really good deal for the Devils. Just over $1 million for McLeod for the next year, I think is a pretty good deal. So pretty good deal for the Devils to get McLeod signed. Pretty good deal for the Bruins to get a solid middle six forward in James Van Riemsdyk for $1 million. I thought Van Riemsdyk would have been a little bit more expensive than that. I didn't think it was getting anywhere close to the $7 million cap that he had previously. But I did think he would get somewhere between $2 and $3 million. So the fact he signed for $1 million is quite surprising to me. And then Stenlund signs a decent one-year, $1 million deal with the Panthers. So Panthers adding some more players, getting Oliver Ekman-Larsson, now Stenlund. Boston trying to replace some of their depth that they've lost in that forward group in trades like with Hall and Foligno, as well as Tyler Bertuzzi, and they are able to get James Van Riemsdyk. And then the Devils are able to bring back good bottom six forward Michael McLeod. So some pretty good signings there. Definitely been really active first hour of free agent frenzy so far. Definitely been a really good first hour of free agent frenzy, and I think this has been a really good start to the free agent frenzy. Looking at some more updates here that could happen. It sounds like another good bottom six forward in Drake Caggiula, according to Frank Seravalli, could be returning to the Oilers organization, so could happen there. Not really much else to talk about right now. We know that Milan Lucic could be heading back to the Boston Bruins. We know that Jonathan Quick could be the New York Rangers back up next year, so some options there. David Pagnotis saying that on the trade talk front, Ducks forward Adam Henrique could be as a guy who's drawing interest right now. Henrique's a solid middle six center / winger. He's very versatile. He's in the final year of his deal, and he's a really good veteran. And if he wasn't injured at the trade line, he could have been dealt at that point. So I definitely think Henrique's another guy who could definitely be traded once again. Not one who's on my top 10 list here, but someone who was on my trade bait list. I think he's in the late 30s or 40s. So definitely going to be interesting to see if Henrique gets moved today. Sounds like Alex Killorn, just once again, one of the top end free agents of the thing. I have him here at number 3. He just priced himself out of Tampa after having a career year. So quite surprised that Killorn won't be able to be back with Tampa. Going to be interesting to see how the Lightning try and replace him and Colton, who they dealt to the Colorado Avalanche. The New Jersey Devils have also re-extended Nathan Bastian. Once again, another guy who wasn't dealt a qualifying offer. Another guy who wasn't given dealt a qualifying offer due to arb rate concerns. He signed him on a 2-year contract extension of average annual value of $1.35 million. So a decent signing for Bastian. I think that's a really good deal. He should continue to be a good bottom six forward, help in the penalty kill, be a really good forward there. So that's a really good addition in my opinion for Bastian. I think long term he could definitely be a really good bottom six forward. So McLeod re-signs in Jersey, gets a 1-year deal. Bastian a 2-year deal, and both are going to continue to be good bottom six forwards in New Jersey. So that's really good moves by the Devils to continue to add and improve that team after going to the second round this year, looking to try and improve and make the conference finals next year. So definitely some interesting signings there. So there's definitely going to be some more signings here. Just a quick recap on what has gone down so far today. Earlier in the day, we had 3 signings by the Detroit Red Wings as they brought back Matt Luff on a 1-year league minimum deal. They brought back Gustav Lindstrom on a 1-year $950,000 deal, and they brought back Klim Kostin on a 2-year $2 million deal. So some 3 pretty good players back for Detroit. Ottawa brings back Erik Brannstrom on a 2-year $805,000 deal, $805,000 AAV. They also bring back Erik Brannstrom on a 1-year deal at $2 million. So that was, once again, a couple of really good options there for the Ottawa Senators to sign some key players. The Carolina Hurricanes signed a couple of key guys. They signed Antti Raanta to a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. They signed Fast. It was a good middle six forward to a 2-year, $2.4 million deal. So a couple of key veterans returning to the Carolina Hurricanes organization. You have the Nashville Predators, who are able to bring in Luke Schenn, who's a solid top 4 right shot defenseman, on a 3-year, $2.75 million deal, and for center Ryan O'Reilly, who signs a 4-year, $4.5 million contract extension to go with the Nashville Predators after being with St. Louis the past number of years. So definitely some solid signings there for the Nashville Predators. The Kings bring in a couple of depth players in Jarrett Anderson-Dolan and Mikhail Maltsev, so a couple of good depth options there for the Kings. The Pittsburgh Penguins are able to bring in Matt Nieto, who's a good bottom six forward. The Washington Capitals are able to bring in Hunter Shepard, who's once again a solid depth goaltender. The Florida Panthers have signed forward Kevin Stenlund. They've also signed defenseman Oliver Ekman-Larsson. The Boston Bruins have brought in forward James Van Riemsdyk. The New Jersey Devils have once again brought back Bastian McLeod. The Edmonton Oilers have brought in Lane Peterson. The Toronto Maple Leafs have brought back Ryan Reeves. And the Columbus Blue Jackets have given Adam Fantilli his entry-level contract, as Fantilli will most likely turn pro this year. So some pretty good signings there for all of these teams, and I think that's a really good deal for all of those teams to so far sign players. Those are some pretty good signings. At this current point, we've had 21 players sign on free agent frenzy day, so interesting to see. Also, we had a small trade to discuss as the Washington Capitals were able to acquire Joel Edmondson from the Montreal Canadiens at $1.75 million cap hit in exchange for at a $1.75 million cap hit, so 50% retained, in exchange for a 3rd and 7th round pick in next year's draft. So those are some pretty solid moves there from the Washington Capitals. Moving on a 3rd and 7th round pick to get Joel Edmondson, who should definitely improve their bottom six. Their defense, of course. So that's a pretty good moves there by the Washington Capitals and the Montreal Canadiens. So once again, some pretty good moves there from the Capitals and Canadiens to make that deal over the course of the next little while. Just looking at some more, and it sounds like Blake Wheeler is going to be signing with the New York Rangers, according to Chris Johnston and Frank Cervalli. It sounds like it's going to be an $800,000 deal with $300,000 in potential bonuses. So that's a really interesting possible move for the New York Rangers, as it sounds like Blake Wheeler going to be going to the New York Rangers. So that's going to improve that Rangers team immensely. We know that they lack a lot of firepower on the right wing. We know that they brought in Tarasenko and Kane, who are both UFAs right now. So definitely, adding a guy like Wheeler could definitely be a huge addition to the New York Rangers. So that's a really good move by New York. It sounds like Wheeler's going to be going to the Rangers. So that's an awesome deal. Also sounds like Semyon Varlamov, who's been the backup for the New York Islanders over the past couple of years, will be back with the Islanders as their backup to Sorokin. So sounds like that's going to happen as well. Definitely going to be interesting to see what other moves happen here. So definitely really interesting move there, as it sounds like Blake Wheeler will be signing with the New York Rangers. So definitely one significant trade, a couple of really good bottom six, a couple of really good signings so far, and I think this is a really good start. So once again, we have our top 10 free agents here. So far, none of them have gone off the board. You have 1, Tyler Bertuzzi, 2, JT Compher, 3, Alex Killorn, 4, Dmitry Orlov, and 5, Matt Dumba. Down here you have 6, Connor Brown, who does sound like he might be going to the Edmonton Oilers. We're still waiting on that. At 7, we have Tristan Jarry. At 8, we have Vladimir Tarasenko. At 9, we have Shane Gostisbehere. And at 10, we have Frederick Anderson. So it sounds like Brown may be the first of those guys, dominoes, to be knocked off, but going to be interesting to see. On the possible trade bait list here, our top 10 players here, we have The Brinkett at 1. We have Scheifele at 2, Hellebuck at 3. We have Hanifin at 4, Lindholm at 5. Down here we have Nylander at 6. We have Karlsson at 7. We have Gibson at 8. We have Konechny at 9. And we have Pesce at 10. So going to be interesting to see which one of these guys is the first to be moved. So it's definitely interesting to see which one of these guys is the first to be moved. Will it be Konechny or Scheifele or Lindholm or Hanifin? Going to be interesting to see if any of those guys wind up getting moved today. But we're now entering hour 2 of our draft live video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. So we're now into hour 2. We're half an hour now into the signing season, and we've had a lot of good news at this point in time. So definitely looks really, really good at this point in time. And now it's official. So the New York Rangers have signed Blake Wheeler to an $800,000 one-year contract extension that will have a possibility of about $300,000 in bonuses. So that's an amazing contract for the Rangers. It keeps their cap hit, which is really tight right now, at a really good place. Wheeler gets to go to the New York Rangers, who are a cup contender, and I think that's a really good fit for the New York Rangers. So Wheeler should probably be able to play either top-line minutes with Zibanejad and Kreider, or second-line minutes with Panarin, and I think that could be a really good fit. Wheeler's getting up there in age. Currently, at this point in time, he's 36 years old, but he's still producing at a very high level. And I think on an offensive dynamo team like the New York Rangers, you're going to have Wheeler, if he can stay healthy, and his line mates as well, possibly put up like 50 or 60 points this year. So that's a really good signing. I was expecting Wheeler to probably get a little bit of a pay cut, put it $2 to $3 million. So I'm quite surprised he put up. Rangers were able to get him for such a cheap deal. But once again, it's a fantastic deal for the Rangers, and I think they really do win that deal. So it's a really good deal for NYR, and they're able to get Wheeler at a one-year $800,000 cap hit. So some other things that are currently being explained right now, just looking at some other things here. It sounds like Quick will be going to the Rangers, according to Pierre LeBrun. That's been speculated for a little bit of a while now. It sounds like, definitely does sound like Wheeler's, after Wheeler signs, Quick's going to be the Shesterkin backup, so that's a really good deal for the Rangers. They're going to get an experienced guy in Wheeler who can help their top six. It sounds like they're going to be getting an experienced backup who can definitely help Shesterkin, so that's going to be a really good move for the Rangers. I definitely like what the Rangers have done up to this point this offseason, so far in training, free agent frenzy. So pretty good signings there for the Rangers. Not too much other things happening at this current point in time. We did see Adam Fantilli sign his entry-level contract, which I think is fantastic, and I really do hope that if the Jackets do still need some center depth, start of the season, Fantilli should be able to make the top six. I hope he can step up and is able to grab like the second line center position. So I think that's a really good deal for Fantilli to sign his entry-level contract. And I think of those guys who were taken in the first round of this past year's draft, like just a couple of days ago, I think Bedard, Karlsson, and Fantilli all have a very solid shot at making the NHL right out of the draft. So I think Bedard should definitely be a top 6 forward in Chicago. Karlsson should be a middle six, either center or winger in Anaheim, and Fantilli should definitely be a solid second-line center in Columbus. So definitely, I like those three. I definitely think those three will be solid NHL forwards come this year. Not sure about anyone else in that draft. You usually do see, though, one or two guys who were taken in the middle round of the draft to surprise everyone and wind up making the team. They might not stay there, but they do make the team at least out of training camp. So it's going to be interesting to see which one of those guys could be a guy who makes the team this year, but definitely interesting to see. With Fantilli signing his entry-level contract, it does sound like he will be playing pro this year, and he will be at most likely at the NHL level for the Jackets. So once again, Wheeler signing a deal with the New York Rangers. It sounds also like LA Kings could be trying to look at Cam Talbot as their possible new starting goaltender. So definitely interesting to see. We'll have to wait on that, but it does sound like Talbot would be signed there. A couple of signings here have happened now. The Quick deal has now become official. Quick has signed a 1-year, one-way contract with an AAV of $825,000. So cheap backup, 1-year deal with New York Rangers. He should definitely be continuing to be a solid backup to Shesterkin. And I think while they did have a really good backup in Halak this past year, I think Quick is definitely a major upgrade on him. So if Quick can find his performance from like a couple of years ago when they were really pushing hard and challenging Edmonton in the playoffs, I think Quick and Shesterkin should definitely really do really well in the Rangers net over the next little while. So pretty good deal for the New York Rangers to sign Quick and to back up Shesterkin. Another deal here, Mackenzie Blackwood, who was not qualified by the San Jose Sharks after being acquired just a little while ago. A couple days ago, I did a separate video about that. Winds up signing. Once again, all these guys who had high qualifying offers, they were let go. They were given their free agency, and now they're all signing their entry-level all signing with the teams who didn't qualify him. So Blackwood gets a 2-year, one-way contract with the Sharks that will have an AAV of $2.35 million. So that's a solid deal for the Sharks. Blackwood is a really good, in my opinion, he can be a really good tandem goalie with the San Jose Sharks. Definitely, at one point he was viewed as a starter, but injuries really derailed his career. He was started as the backup last year with Jersey, but then was downgraded to third stringer after Schmid played really well and took over the role in the playoffs. So there was definitely no option there to keep him in Jersey. And now he's signed a 2-year, $2.35 million deal with the Sharks, where I think he should continue to be a really good backup/tandem goalie, and he should be able to play really well with Kapanen next year. So that's a really good deal for the Sharks, and hopefully Blackwood can continue to find his game and re-sign with the Sharks and a pretty good deal. So once again, it's a pretty good deal for the Sharks. Nothing else currently right now. Just the one trade. We've now had 24 signings on Free Agent Frenzy. The start of it, we haven't even reached the first hour yet, so definitely there's probably going to be a ton more things. Once again, we still have all 10 of our top 10 free agents, in my opinion, still on the board, so definitely interesting to see if any of these guys wind up getting moved. Sounds like one of them could be signing in the not too distant future. It sounds like, according to Chris Johnston, that our 10th goalie on the trade bait list, Frederik Andersen, might be signing a 2-year contract extension to remain with the Carolina Hurricanes. So that's going to be interesting, given the fact they still have Kochetkov and Ranta. I do wonder if they maybe try and keep Kochetkov in the minors next year. Definitely interesting to see, but it sounds like Frederik Andersen could be going back to Carolina. So going to be interesting to see if that's really what happens. Sounds like those are some pretty good deals here, and it sounds like Andersen and maybe Brown could be the first of my top 10 free agents to be gone. Sounds like those guys could be the first ones, so going to be interesting to see what happens there. Once again, so some solid signings here from a couple of teams who have dipped into the free agent market. I really like what the Rangers have done. They've gotten a really good backup goalie in Jonathan Quick, and they've also gotten a really good top six winger in Blake Wheeler. The Panthers have gotten a really good bomb six forward in Kevin Stenlund, as well as a solid defensive player in Oliver Ekman-Larsson. The Nashville Predators have really improved their team. Adding Luke Schenn on the right side, as well as Ryan O'Reilly in the center group. So I like what they've done. The Kings have added some pretty good depth with guys like Maltsev and getting back Anderson Dolan. I like Boston moving to get James Van Riemsdyk on a 1-year, $1 million deal. That's a steal, in my opinion, of a deal for the Boston Bruins. And Van Riemsdyk should definitely be a really good player for the Bruins. I really do like the Fantilli deal. Fantilli signing his ELC with the Jackets. So I definitely like a lot of these deals that have happened so far. Matt Nieto, a bomb six forward, now in Pittsburgh. Once again, a really good contract extension there. Definitely. As you can see, my top 10 trade bait list is here. Top 10 players who I think will be dealt. Like I said, a couple of Flames. Hellebuck. You've got Pesce, Carlson, Gibson, Konechny, Nylander. there's definitely been some other options here that have really worked so far. Sounds like there's going to be some more signings in the not too distant future. Sounds like Cam Talbot is going to LA, and it does sound like Frederik Andersen will be returning to the Carolina Hurricanes. So a couple of solid moves there. Talbot, according to Frank Seravalli, will be going to the Kings. According to Merrick and Elliot Friedman, they'll both be going to the Frederik Andersen will be going to Carolina. So it sounds like number 10 is going to be going off my board in the not too distant future in Carolina's Frederik Andersen. So that sounds like it's going to be a really good deal there. Just double checking here. No official signings as of yet, but it does sound like Andersen will be going to Carolina, and goaltender Cam Talbot will be going to the LA Kings. So hopefully Talbot can help the Kings in their net, and Andersen can definitely be a really good player in Carolina. Just trying to look up some more things here, possible trade options. Sounds like Tyson Jost, who was not qualified by the Buffalo Sabres, will be signing a one-year deal back in Buffalo. So sounds like, once again, another guy who was not dealt his qualifying offer is signing back with a team who did not sign his qualifying offer. So sounds like Jost will be back with the Buffalo Sabres. Going to be interesting to see how that goes. Sounds like there's going to be a lot of other options here for some of these guys. Still a ton of solid options here for some of these teams. I do wonder if we get some more trades in the next little while. So far, 24 signings at this point in time. We're about 42 minutes into the free agent frenzy list, so definitely going to be interesting to see who signs next. It sounds like Jost could be signing in Buffalo. It sounds like Talbot in LA. It sounds like Frederik Andersen. It sounds like the Lightning are trying to sign forwards Connor Sheary and Luke Glendening, according to Kevin Weeks. So it sounds like the Bolts are trying to bolster their bottom six a little bit here with Glendening and Sheary. Going to be interesting to see if they really are able to sign him. Sounds like Talbot's going to be signed, Frederik Andersen, like I said, Jost and Buffalo. So sounds like there's going to be a couple of options here for some more signings in the not too distant future. So, and we have had a couple more signings. As we have talked about, so both goaltenders who were possibly rumored to be leaving Carolina have kept and remained in Carolina, as Frederik Andersen has signed a 2-year contract extension with a $3.4 million AAV to remain with the Carolina Hurricanes. So that's a really good deal, in my opinion, for Carolina. They keep Raanta, they keep Andersen. Those are two really good deals for the Hurricanes, and while they still have Kochetkov in the minors, they can use Raanta, who will sign a 1-year deal for the next year, and then once Ranta's done, they can then use Kochetkov as their backup until Andersen's done, and then once Andersen's done, Kochetkov can then be a backup. So Kochetkov could then be a good tandem goalie. So good signings there. Andersen in Carolina, Raanta back in Carolina. Both goalies remain in Carolina. So going to be interesting to see how they do it with Kochetkov as well, as he starts a 4-year, $2 million extension, $2 million AAV extension. But Number 10 on my trade bait list is off my boards, as Frederik Andersen has been re-upped with the Carolina Hurricanes. So on top of that, we have a Tyson Jost signing a 1-year, $2 million deal with the Buffalo Sabres. That's a solid deal in my opinion. Jost showed he can be a really good bottom six forward in Buffalo this past year, so that's a really good signing for the Buffalo Sabres, and hopefully Jost can continue to do well as he did this past year. So once again, really good signing there for the Buffalo Sabres. That's all the signings we have at this point in time. Like we said, we have the one trade that happened earlier with the Montreal Canadiens dealing Joel Edmondson, who was on my trade bait list, not top 10, but later on in the list to the Washington Capitals in exchange for a solid draft pick. So definitely, that was a really good signing there, pickup there for the Washington Capitals, and I really do like what they did there. some other options here. According to a couple of reports here, it sounds like Joonas Korpisalo will be heading to the Ottawa Senators. It sounds like the Sens will be signing Korpisalo to a 5-year contract extension, so that's huge for the Senators. Korpisalo had a really good season this year after coming off of knee surgery. Did really well in Columbus, was dealt to LA. Had a fantastic run with LA until he got into Game 3 of the... until he got into Game 4 of the Edmonton Oilers-LA Kings series, where he really... Oilers started to take over that series, and Korpisalo didn't look overly well, but I think this is a really good signing. Maybe a little bit too long, with 5 years. It sounds like the AAV will be $4 million, so... Once again, not a fantastic signing in my opinion. I thought Korpisalo would have gotten a 2-3-year deal. I think 5 years is a little bit risky, especially at a $4 million cap hit, and with Korpisalo having some injury history. But I think this could work out in the really good in the long run for the Ottawa Senators, as the Sens needed a goaltender, and I think adding a guy like Korpisalo really would help that team. So that's a really good option here for the Ottawa Senators to get Korpisalo. It sounds like it will be a 5-year, $4 million deal, so going to be interesting to see what happens, and it has been official, yeah. So 5 years, $4 million for Joonas Korpisalo in the Ottawa Senators organization. So once again, they lost Cam Talbot. He was a healthy scratch toward the end of the season anyway. They weren't going to bring him back. There's a lot of talk they could go with the tandem of Forsberg and Søgaard, but would that really work for a team who's trying to compete for a playoff spot next year? So they wind up going with Korpisalo. So I expect something like Korpisalo and Forsberg next year as a tandem, and then maybe next offseason they move on from Forsberg and they have Søgaard be the backup. So definitely, I think that's a really good addition for the Ottawa Senators. We know Ottawa was one of the teams really looking for a goaltender. Korpisalo was on my free agent list, not top 10, but was a solid free agent. So in my opinion, that was a really good deal for the Ottawa Senators to sign Korpisalo. So really good deal there. So definitely a really good deal there for the Ottawa Senators, in my opinion. A little bit too long, maybe a tad bit too money. I was expecting Korpisalo to get a 2 to 3 year deal at around $3 million, but I think given the fact they needed a starting goaltender, that was a solid move by the Ottawa Senators. So pretty good deal there from Ottawa, and I do think that that really does help out that team. So now a couple of key goalies are signed. Anderson Ranta remain in Carolina. Korpisalo is in now Ottawa. Quicks with the New York Rangers. Varlamov sounds like he'll be going to the Islanders. So definitely sounds like there could be a lot of options here in the goalie market for the all these options. So definitely sounds like there's some really... So it definitely sounds like there's still some options here. Okay, and we have another one here. Official now with the LA Kings that goaltender Cam Talbot has signed a 1-year, $1 million deal with the LA Kings. So once again, they move on from Korpisalo, who's now signed in Ottawa, and former Ottawa starter tandem goalie Cam Talbot now signs in LA. So LA and Ottawa swap goaltenders. Talbot's a decent player. He was healthy scratch toward the end of the season in Ottawa. I think he can still be a good starter. So with Talbot and Copley next year, hopefully a duo of those two can help the LA Kings make the playoffs. We know that they've signed a couple of depth forwards today. We know that they made that huge Pierre-Luc Dubois deal. They have a little bit of a weaker defensive end. They could still look to move salaries. So that's a really good deal for the LA Kings, signing a good goaltender at Talbot for really, really cheap. I thought Talbot would probably want him more, but it sounds like Talbot, that's a solid signing in my opinion. So Talbot, a really good signing in my opinion with LA, a 1-year, $1 million deal, and I think that could be a really great addition for the LA Kings. So really good deal there for LA. So really good deal for LA. There's definitely still some options here on the free agent market. there's definitely still some options on the free agent market as we currently look at it right now. Of my top 10, 9 are still available. Frederik Andersen is re-signed with the Carolina Hurricanes. He was number 10. So number 9 in Shane Gostisbehere, number 8 in Vladimir Tarasenko, number 7 in Matt Dumba, number 7 in Tristan Jarry, number 6 in Tristan Jarry, number 6 in Connor Brown, number 5 in choose the All-Star. That's lovely. So some options here on the forward market here. On the trade market, I mean, Michael Bunting is another guy who I think could also be a guy who's a really good target here. Jonathan Toews with the former Blackhawk here could definitely be another option. Ryan Graves on the defensive end. Buyout Matt Duchene. Scott Mayfield on the Islanders blue line. Jason Zucker, who was with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Jason Zucker, who was with the Pittsburgh Penguins. You got a couple of other guys here. Defenseman Carson Seuss, Gustav Nyquist, Patrick Kane, Oliver Kyler Yamamoto. There definitely seems to be a lot of options here on the free agent market, so definitely more interesting to see what happens. Sounds like there could be some more things that are happening in the not too distant future, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens. Going to be interesting to see where some of the other guys go. Max Domi, Radko Gudas, Bergeron, does he retire? Does he sign with Boston? Brossoit, Tatar, Suter, Klingberg. There's a ton of options here on the free agent market still. And, well, a couple of guys who I predicted in my top 30, like Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who's now signed in Florida. Another guy who I had in my top 30 was Antti Raanta, who's 19th, who's re-signed in Carolina. Van Riemsdyk, who I had 17th, who's now in Boston. 12th in Blake Wheeler, who's now in New York. 11th in O'Reilly, who's now in... 11th in O'Reilly, who's now in... 11th in O'Reilly, who's now in 11th in O'Reilly, who's now in Nashville. So there's definitely been some signings at this point in time. Definitely interesting to see who other guys wind up resigning. Like I said, there's still some options out there. It sounds like maybe Gudas now is going to the Anaheim Ducks. We know that the Ducks need some defensemen, so that could be a really good option here. There's definitely been some more signings as of late. Okay, we've had a couple more signings. So, defenseman Kyle Burrows, who was with the Vancouver Canucks this past year, play either side, mostly a righty. He can really do really well. He signed a 3-year, $1.1 million deal with the San Jose Sharks. So, Sharks get a solid third pair of defensemen who can definitely play in that lineup, I think, in my opinion. The New York Rangers signed depth forward Tyler Pitlick to a 1-year contract extension of average annual value of $790,000. So Pitlick's a solid option there for the New York Rangers. I think that'll be a really good option there. Erik Johnson, that was a really good veteran player who's been playing with the Colorado Avalanche. He signed a 1-year, $3.25 million contract extension with the Buffalo Sabres. So that's a really good deal in my opinion. Johnson, 1 year, $3.25 million. He cuts that AAV in half from last time, from his last contract. And Johnson is going to be a really good either third pair defenseman or top four defenseman with some of those other key young guys. So that's a really good deal. The Anaheim Ducks have signed Radko Gudas to a 3-year, $4 million AAV deal. So once again, we know they needed some defensemen. They were moving a lot of them. They could use a guy like Gudas, and that's a really good addition in my opinion. So Gudas to Anaheim. And then on the goalie market again, James Reimer has signed a 1-year, $1.5 million deal with the Detroit Red Wings. So most likely next year you'll have a tandem in Detroit of Husso and Reimer, and hopefully that's better than a tandem of Husso and Hellberg/Nedeljkovic that was this year. Hopefully Reimer, who's a really good veteran, has worked in a tandem over the past little while, can help Husso and can provide him a little bit more rest time. And I think if they can, Husso's a really good tandem goaltender, so if Reimer can get a little bit more starts than Nedeljkovic or Hellberg did last year, I think Husso could have also played a little bit better. So that's a really good signing in my opinion. Reimer in Detroit, Pitlick as a depth player in New York, Burrows will be a third line player in San Jose, and Pitlick will be a really good player in New York. So those are some really good options there for the signings. To my current knowledge, we haven't had any other trades. Sounds like there could be some other things here. It sounds like Connor Brown will be going to Edmonton, according to Elliot Friedman. So it sounds like at this point in time, number 6 on my trade bait list, and Connor Brown will be going to Edmonton at this point in time. Still some pretty good offers here. Gudas, long-term, good money extension with the Ducks. Erik Johnson, a good signing there with Buffalo Sabres. Wheeler, amazing deal with the New York Rangers. Some other good signings, Korpisalo, Anderson, all these things we know, so not too much more to update at this point in time. Once again, there's definitely going to be some more interesting names. If you look at the free agent market, if you look away from the free agent market, you look at the trade market, some of these guys, like I said, I have my top 10 trade players here. Some other guys who I think could be traded at this point in time. A guy like Carter Hart on the goalie side could be a guy who moves. Same with Scott Laughton. Anthony Duclair is another guy on the forward group who I would be looking at to possibly be trading. The Blues are probably still trying to move a defenseman, so Parayko, Leddy, Krug, I wonder if one of those guys gets moved today. The Flames could definitely move a guy like Dan Vladar. I think that's a possibility. Nikita Zadorov with the Calgary Flames as well. Victor Olofsson in Buffalo, Barabanov in San Jose, Grzelcyk in Philly, Grzelcyk in Boston, Garland in Vancouver. So there's still a lot of options here for trades, possible trades over the next little while. I definitely do think that there's going to be a lot of possible trades in the next couple of days. But hopefully we get something today over the next couple of hours. I'll probably be with you for the next couple of hours here. So definitely interesting to see what happens. Like we said, some pretty good signings so far, but going to be interesting to see what other signings happen. So at this point in time, we have some pretty good signings. We do have a couple more signings that have happened. Connor Brown has indeed signed a 1-year, $775,000 extension. That's really impressive. I'm quite surprised that Brown signed basically league minimum with the Edmonton Oilers. So once again, Brown was coming off an injury. He's still a solid goaltender. Solid middle six forward, in my opinion. He's a really good speedy guy. He's played with Connor McDavid before, so I think this is a really good addition for the Oilers. It gives them some top 9 addition. He's a guy who can replace Kyler Yamamoto, and in my opinion, that is a really good, at $775,000, that's a $2.4 million difference on the cap if Brown can replace Yamamoto. So that's a really good deal in my opinion, and I think Brown should definitely be an extremely good forward in Edmonton. Another signing here that's happened, the Boston Bruins have signed forward Morgan Geekie to a 2-year contract extension as an AAV of $2 million. So we know Geekie was one of the guys who was not given his qualifying offer last year by the Seattle Kraken. So that was a really good depth option in my opinion for the Boston Bruins. Bruins are able to get a solid guy in Geeky, who should definitely help in the bottom six. So really good signing there for the Bruins to get Geeky, and another one of my guys in the top 10 of my free agent list. And Connor Brown is now gone as well. So Connor Brown at six in my opinion on my free agent board, and Anderson, who was 10th, are both gone. Anderson's re-signed in Carolina, and Brown signed a one-year deal in Edmonton. So pretty good deals there for both Edmonton and Carolina. And now we have 8 players left on my top 10 free agent list. So going to be interesting to see if any of these guys wind up getting moved. We have a couple of key forwards, 1, 2, 3, in Bertuzzi, Killorn, and Bertuzzi, Compher, and Killorn. We have a couple of key defensemen, 4, 5, with guys like Orlov and Dumba at 7. We have Jari at 8. We have Tarasenko, and at 9 we have Gostisbehere. So there's still definitely some really big names on the free agent market, and we're just getting started. We're currently up to, at this point in time, 35 signings, and we have been at it just over an hour now. So it's just past the hour mark. So pretty good first hour in the free agency, and it's going to be interesting to see what's next. We do have another signing to discuss here, and that is that depth forward Riley Nash has signed a 2-year league minimum deal with the New York Rangers. So just like Tyler Pitlick, not a big signing, a good player who can definitely replace some of their depth that they lost with a guy like Tyler Mott that they lost. So that's a really good signing in my opinion. Pitlick, really good player. Nash, really good player. So some really good depth additions there on top of adding Quick as their backup and Wheeler as a top 6 forward. So some great additions there by the New York Rangers, in my opinion. So some great additions there, in my opinion, for the New York Rangers. And I think Quick should continue to be a good backup. I think Nash, Pitlick should be good bottom 6 forwards. And I think Wheeler should be a good top 6 forward, in my opinion. So